For Mika by phone is Sheriff David Clarke of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Police Office. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Maria.
Bill Johnson, let me get your take first off in terms of identifying this as a hate crime.
Well, certainly there's a lot of hatred evidenced against the officers themselves. I think the attacks that we're seeing upon police all across this country evince a hatred of police in general, regardless of the color of their skin. The happenstance or the murders in Dallas, the man who committed the murders has already been dispatched to meet his maker and to be judged. So I think it may be late, unfortunately, there. But I do think that the Department of Justice and the President has to affirmatively act to protect police going forward. And we've been incredibly disappointed. All across this country, officers are disappointed in the lack of leadership, the lack of public support, the lack of equipment, the lack of trust that the President and the Attorney General have evinced in their treatment of police.
Because the President's words are strong words, and that sets the tone for the entire country. Sheriff Clarke, do you agree with that? What are you seeing from your standpoint?
Well, here's what I see. I think there's an elephant in the room that too many people want to talk around, and it's where we go when we're dealing with these deadly encounters between young black males and police. And I think it's a good time to transition back to what the real problem is and just ask yourself, what leads to so many instances of interactions between young black males and police in urban centers? It's crime. Who are police after? Criminals. Ask yourself who is overrepresented in involvement in violent crime? Young black males. Now, that might be an ugly truth, but it's still the truth. But too many people want to focus on changing police tactics and police behavior, something that I believe works, by the way. Nobody wants to talk about the flawed lifestyle choices and behavior of too many young black males, things like gang and drug involvement and weapons violations. Those things are going to increase the risk of a deadly encounter. But no one wants to ask, where are the dads, where are the fathers? Instead, we go after the low-hanging fruit. Too many people want to attack the police. So if people want to look at this thing, and this police issue might be some part of it, but it's a small part of it, everyone wants to dismiss or ignore that elephant in the room, these pathologies in these urban centers.
Right. And Bill Johnson, we heard from the President earlier this week from Warsaw, and he's headed to Dallas this upcoming week. You say you're disappointed in what the President has done in terms of setting the tone and bringing us together. What do you want to see from him?
Yes, the President has called for a truthful discussion, a frank discussion, and yet he perpetuates this myth, this lie, that these protests are peaceful. The Attorney General keeps referring to the protesters in Dallas as peaceful protesters. Yet everywhere these groups go, attacks and shootings and murders of police officers follow in their wake, whether it was Ferguson, Missouri, New York City, Baltimore, Maryland, and now Dallas. At some point, if we want to have an honest conversation, you have to realize that these are not peaceful protests. They never were. They march around calling for the murders of police officers, and yet when it happens, everybody acts as if they're shocked. Like, how could this have happened? Responsibility has to come from the very top. It has to come from the presidency. And to have groups like this protesting and saying that we want to tell you how you ought to run your local government or local police department, but they can't even control their own rallies, it's insane. The men and women are out there today, as Congressman pointed out, they're still doing their jobs this morning. They get up and go to work. They're threatened. They're shot at all across this country. San Antonio, Dallas, Georgia, Tennessee, St. Louis, just in the last couple days. But they still do their jobs. And that's, I think, what has to be recognized.
So what can the President say, Sheriff Clarke, from your standpoint, on the ground, in the thick of things, in the police force? What can the President say, do you believe, to underline Bill Johnson's point there?
He should say nothing. Every time he opens his mouth, he fans the flames of this anti-police sentiment that is sweeping the country in some of these urban centers. He reminds me of a pyromaniac who sets a fire, then calls 911 for the fire department, and then returns to the scene to watch the fire department have to put out the fire. Look, Dallas is on fire. Many of these cities, Chicago, Milwaukee, Louisiana, these cities are on fire. The President shows up. This is nothing but symbolic. And I think the best thing he should do is just stop talking, let these things be handled at the local level. The media is going to do enough fanning the flames and creating drama. He doesn't need to add to it. I'm going to continue to fight and resist and push back against this anti-cop president's attempt to transform this profession of law enforcement. We don't need to be transformed. He knows nothing about it. He's never done this job. some of the things that he recommends that police put into their training are just going to get officers hurt and killed as well as citizens. So right now, you know, with what he's done with this thing to set this whole country on fire with this his race politics, he should just leave it alone.
Bill Johnson, do you agree with that?
I do. I think that a lot of the recommendations coming from the administration, and particularly the disarming of police, taking away defensive gear like bulletproof vests and helmets and bulletproof cars, and at the same time appeasing very violent movements. It's appeasement, it's disarmament. He's become the Neville Chamberlain of this war on cops.
Wow. Bill Johnson, Sheriff Clarke, thanks very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your time this morning.
Blue Lives Matter.
We will
Thank
be
you, Mayor.
watching